guys, so I wanted to make this particular video because I have been delving into both Western and Vedic astrology, and it does become confusing. And so I have been watching like videos and reading articles and obviously trying to learn both systems. That's a whole lot. I mean, just learning one system is a whole lot. Learning two systems is like probably a little bit insane. However, I mean, in a short period of time. So I wanted to just give you so far from a very inexperienced point of view on both of the astrological systems that I see so far. And like I said, this is just from my own limited experience, but what I see in both systems. So everyone knows that has been watching my channel for any length of time that I am very much into, learning about origins and stuff like that. And of course, aliens, right? So I am going to be going through two different decks here, and I want to show you really quick. One is the Black Moon astrology cards, which I absolutely adore. I did mod those so they're smaller than what they were. I cut all the borders off and then put purple on the edging, which there is a video for that. And then the other one is the Vedic astrology study deck, Shedding Light on Joytista by Julianne Victoria, which many of you probably also follow her channel. I will be putting a link to her channel down below. But so the oldest known, or at least up until recently, the oldest known written anything that has to do with astrology was from a cuneiform tablet by the Sumerians, and the name of this tablet was Enuma Anu Enlil. And on this particular tablet, it just had like different like astronomical things. I'm just like keeping it really, really brief. I don't have it in front of me, but it was just like, if this star is bright, or if the sun and the star, just stuff like that, then the harvest will be good, or, flooding is coming, stuff like that. Okay. And that was roughly like 2300 BC, or now considered BCE, before Common Era. And even though it was roughly 2300 BCE, they do believe that the majority of things that happened were passed down orally, and then around that time period is when they started putting things down. Well, roughly about 3,500 years ago is when they started actually putting things down on like cuneiform tablets for the Sumerians. But the Sumerians were, like, they believe that their civilization started like roughly around 6,000 years ago. I could be wrong. That's just what I've read thus far. But so that particular Sumerian astrology was then passed down to the Babylonians, or Assyrians, Mesopotamians. Okay. So there's many people that have said, or believed, that it was the Babylonians that had the first astrological calendar and stuff like that. But I believe that it actually started in Sumeria. And then that was passed down from the Babylonians to the Greeks and Egyptians and on and on. Now we get to the Vedic. And the Vedic astrology is like Indian or Indus Valley, that culture. And there were people that would say that that actually came about by way of Greeks as well. However, there was something that was found to say that Siddhartha had pointed out, who was the first Buddha, Siddhartha, pointed out that there are several references to the zodiac in the Rigveda and in the Mahabharata, which were older than before the Greek influence in Asia, which led many to believe that actually, or not believe, but I guess there was a lot of evidence showing that the Sumerians and the Indus Valley actually did trading before the Greeks ever had any kind of influence in Asia. So that would also lead me to believe that they got theirs partially from the Sumerians. Now, as I was reading through this, another zodiac system came up, or astrological system came up, and it was called the Armenian zodiac. And the reason why this is important is because there was a more recent discovery of an observatory in Metsamar in Armenia that is predating even the Babylonian one by roughly 2,000 years. And they were said to be able to create calendars and envision the curve of the earth. So the fact that, and I'll move on to this part, but the people that were of this particular, where they found these particular, this observatory, which is called like the Armenian Stonehenge, which is older than Stonehenge and all that. They also found some stone carvings with zodiac figures in it from like 4,000 or 3,000 BC. And those were on some rocks around the Gaghamana, I didn't even say that right, Gaghama mountain range in Armenia as well. So just to put a little something into perspective, where this was found, this observatory, was in like the Euphrates Valley and near Mount Ararat in eastern Anatolia and Armenia. And there is a book that is referenced, and an author, his name is Rick Ney. He's the author of Karahunj, and it's called The Armenian Stonehenge. So if you want more information on that, that's one of the books that you can read about this particular Armenian Stonehenge. However, was saying that the Sumerians, the Akkadians, the Assyrians each believed that Mount Ararat was not only the name of, or the home of where their gods lived, but also the source of the civilizations, because of the water from the Tigris and the Euphrates that would flow down into their cities in order to help their civilizations to flourish. So the Armenians had also many myths and legends about the Ararat Mountains, which predate Christianity. Well, some of them predated Christianity. That included, from this particular area where this observatory was found and these rock carvings where they were found, that there were other, like they were afraid to go up on this mountain because of stories of reptilians, dragons, snakes, and other reptilian monsters. And what comes to mind is Anunnaki and reptilians. I'm sure if you know me at all and have been watching my channel, you knew that's where I was leading with this, right? Well, if you also know that the oldest known record or story that we have in the world right now is the Epic of Gilgamesh, which is also, you can see a earlier depiction, I suppose you could say, or a later depiction that was used in the Bible also with like Noah's Ark, the story of Noah's Ark and the Great Flood, right? And that Noah's Ark came to rest on Mount Ararat. Well, I had gotten into this before about the actual, sorry, I should be changing these. I get so preoccupied with the fact that the Anunnaki were from a different planet, aliens, right? Nibiru. And they did not want to warn the people when Nibiru was coming back, the humans that they had created. They did not want to warn them. And then Enki, who was also like linked to the serpent in the Garden of Eden, did warn Gilgamesh or Noah about the flood that was coming. Hence, he was saved and his family was saved. So it makes me wonder if that also, and the point I'm trying to get to, I'm sorry, in a horrible way, is that I'm thinking if this was Noah, and this is where Noah's Ark came to, or Gilgamesh came to actually rest on Mount Ararat, and the Armenians, as well as Assyrians and the Sumerians, believed that their gods actually were up on the mountain. That's where the astrology would come from as well. Something also that I noted, and I'm getting into this. So, Western astrology is also kind of like a more modern version, I would say, of that Sumerian astrology that came from Greek, and the Vedic, I think, was also, they just changed things up a little bit. However, one major difference that I see is that they, in the Vedic, continue to go by like the actual stars, and the whole concept that the universe is like always expanding, so the stars are moving, they're expanding and moving out, so of course their placement would be different. Whereas Western astrology is more based on, well, the tropical is more based on the fact that they are fixed in position, more or less saying, you know, it's based on like seasons. So every, you know, March 21st, when the summer solstice is, or I'm sorry, the spring solstice, that's when the Zodiac begins every year again. That's where your Aries comes in, which is the first Zodiac sign. So as you noticed, the actual dates on the Western astrology versus the Vedic astrology are different. So you may be one in one system and a different sign in another system, because sidereal or sidereal Zodiac, which is also Vedic astrology, or another name for it is Hindu astrology, it is roughly right now like 24 degrees behind what the Western astrology is. And approximately it changes 1 degree every 72 years. So I'm sure you've heard the term the age of Aquarius. So right now we are in, according to like Vedic astrology, we are in like the coming of the age of Aquarius, because right now we're technically in the age of Pisces, not the age of Aries. And before that, it was the age of Taurus, which was the bull. And we see back 4,000 or 5,000 years ago that there was many bull cults that were starting. So, let me look for my notes. I got all kinds of notes here. So I want to do a little bit of math for you. So now that we are in actually the age of Pisces, which means when the spring solstice actually starts, we're in the sign of Pisces. We're not in the sign of Aries, which is what the Western goes by. So if you figure we've got like roughly 6 degrees left times 72, because it's 72 years per 1 degree it changes. that would move us into the age of Aquarius in roughly 432 years. But if you use that math and go backwards, so we began the age of Pisces roughly 1,728 years ago, which would have put us at 292 AD. And then roughly another 2,160 years, because that's roughly how much it takes every 30 degrees, which is what a whole house is 30 degrees. So essentially each zodiac is 30 degrees. So if it takes 2,160 years per each 30, roughly 1,868 BC was when we were actually in and moved into the age of Aquarius. Or I'm sorry, the age of Aries. And that is when, pretty much, a little bit before that, is when the Western and the Vedic astrology charts both matched up. But because our universe is continuing to expand, and because of the tilting of the earth, what zodiac signs that are still, that you can see are different. So roughly 4,028 BC is when we moved into the age of Taurus. And there has been like depictions of bulls that, that look like zodiac signs, and or hearing about like cults and stuff like that worshipped the bull. They date those back to roughly that time period, which is very interesting. But it leads me to believe that Vedic is much more accurate because it's actually going by the stars. And here's the thing, though. There's a few things in Vedic astrology that they don't have. Like, they don't have Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, because at the time when they created this system, they couldn't see it with the naked eye, so they didn't know, which I find interesting. And why I also think that Western is really good is because Western, I believe, started way before that through Sumerian, and it's been passed down through the different cultures or civilizations, but it already had the 12 zodiacs. So where did they get that information? In my opinion, that had to come from something divine, like aliens, right? That's my opinion. That's what I truly, truly believe, the Anunnaki. Because I also believe that it was Enki who gave the information to humanity in order to educate themselves, right? Like the fallen angels, the Nephilim, giving that valuable information, like about magic and all that kind of stuff. So I think there's something to be said for that. And that the Western astrology is also the same astrology that was Armenian. Their calendar was the same. I just wish that it would have continued to evolve with the actual stars. So after watching a couple of different videos, I understand from people that are actually astrologers. I am not an astrologer. I am just merely learning and trying to, find my way through it. But after watching a couple of videos and reading some articles from different people about the differences, there are many, many differences. Whereas, and I should have been, my apologies, continuing to go through this. This was the whole point of having it this way. But there are different things. Like, for instance, the North Node and South Node are called Rahu. And these are the of the moon, the North Node and South Node of the moon, I believe. Rahu and Ketu in Vedic, and it's just the North Node and the South Node here. And although Vedic does not have Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, they do have other things like different asteroids like Chiron. They have like the black moon, Lilith. They have, of course, you can see these other, you know, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, which I think make a big deal as far as they are part of our system. So I see pluses and minuses in both things. So essentially what I'm trying to get to in my own journey with astrology is that I think it is important to know both, because and one of the videos that I watched, one of them said, this lady that I watched, she had said that she feels like Western is more a feminine system, whereas the Vedic is more a masculine system, because it is very, very logical. It is very accurate. So if you want to know like a really good date or a prediction on something, Vedic is your way to go, because it's more precise. It is more calculated, like a science that you can, you know, break down in math, which you can still predict with Western, but it's not as quite an exact science, because it's not really the true alignment of everything, because our universe is continuing to you know, move, grow bigger. Also, the different, because there is no Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, some of your astrological signs, their planetary rulers are different in Vedic versus Western. So there's always that as well. And also another thing, let me get to it. I think for the most part, what they say for each sign is pretty much the same. But astrology is so complex. Truly, truly complex. You are not the equivalent of just your sun sign. We are complex people. If you really, really want to know, you want to dig in deep to all of the different aspects of your charts, in my opinion. But let me get to, oops, the next part. So it's these. This is what I wanted to get to. In Vedic, there are different nakshatras. 27 different nakshatras, which is a lunar astrology. There is no lunar astrology in Western astrology. We know that I mean, in detail. And you know what? This is my actual nakshatra, which it's also based on like the moon and all that at your time of birth. So I want to give you an example of what it says for my particular nakshatra. Uttara Phalguni is the 12th of the 27 nakshatras. Uttara, which means concluding, is the second half of the constellation shared with the previous one, Purva Phalguni. And like Purva Phalguni, the symbol for Uttara Phalguni is also the bed, which represents the flow of power, courage, and ambition from the higher self into the physical and earthly plane. Each of the four legs of the bed symbolize the four koshas, or sheaths, that our soul experience here on earth. The physical, Annamaya Kosha, the subtle, Pranamaya Kosha, the emotional or astral, Manamaya Kosha, and the intellectual, Vijnanamaya Kosha. The ruling planet is the sun, which represents our higher selves, our souls, and the divine, our source of life, power, and creation here on earth. The ruling deities, like Uttara's first half, are Aryaman and Bhaga, showing that this too can be a very fortunate nakshatra. Uttara Falaguni's motivation is moksha, and it holds all three guna qualities, sattva, rasa, and tamas, or rajas. Those with natal moon in Uttara Falaguni are able to unify the inner and outer with the awareness of being a soul experiencing human existence. Which then again takes me back to the Fool, which Courtney pointed out to me. That's why I love the Fool so much, because the Fool is all about experiencing, right? And they can achieve success both material and spiritually. And then it goes on to talk about, and this is in the book, Shedding Light on Jyotisha from Julianne Victoria. I highly recommend, if you are going to start exploring into astrology, to get, or Vedic for that, to get this particular deck. It is absolutely wonderful. And the book, the Vedic Astrology Study Deck, and then Shedding Light on Jyotisha. I really highly recommend it. So there is no lunar. And as witches and pagans and what have you, the moon is also highly important. So my whole thing is balance, because I think that the Vedic, in my opinion, is more actual. So if I want to find out something that's going to happen in my future and approximately what time it's going to happen in my future, or even find like the actual path of when something happened, that turning point in my life, what have you, I think that Vedic is the way to go. Now for the everyday, like the emotions and the feelings, this is more of a free will kind of interpretation kind of astrology. But I believe that there is way, way more information on Western astrology than there is Vedic. At least in the US, I believe that there is. But even when you look online, the majority that I have found are like Western charts versus Vedic charts. And one is a wheel and one is like a rectangle. So, the way that it, or like a square, which I find very, very interesting. Let's see, what else? I mean, there's other things also for you to look at for both systems. I don't think one is more valid than the other. I think they're both perfect for what, in different ways to use them. But I think the most balanced thing for me to do is to learn both systems and take from both of those systems. I will say, though, for me, I am a Capricorn in both, but I am a cusp in both of those. But in Vedic, I am a Sagittarius Capricorn cusp, and in this one, I am a Capricorn Aquarius cusp. But that's just the sun sign. So I hope you have enjoyed this. As I said, I am going to be putting links to a couple of different videos that I've watched, and they are astrologers. So I highly recommend checking those out. And I will be putting links down to a couple of different articles that I have read, and I just highly recommend digging in and learning what's right for you and what's not right for you. But just keep in mind that the Vedic is the true star alignment. So not that this is not valid also. It is. But the last time that these were accurate, I believe, was, or at the same point, was like over 1,500 years ago or something like that. So I always keep that. Oh, and there was something else I wanted to say really quick. Another reason why this was sticking out in my head as to the difference was because even like the wheel of the year, okay? And this last solstice, which was the autumn solstice, Mabon, it did not even feel like it was the solstice to me, because, and I had made mention to my husband, I had talked with a few other friends, and it had already been for 2 or 3 weeks. Our nights had already been getting longer. And the sun was down much earlier than when the solstice was. So the wheel of the year is not the same as what it was 2,000 years ago. That is different. If we were to have to go back to a system where we had to watch the stars and pay attention to the stars for when is the best time to harvest and when is the best time to plant our stuff, it would not be, in my opinion, from what I have seen, it would not be on the actual solstices that are in the wheel of the year. It doesn't like pertain, which shows me that, you know, things are changing. So I wish that this system, I wish that they were merged. So merged, but you can't have the best of both worlds, right? So I believe in balance and learning a bit about both in order to get more introspection and also, like, you know, dates and times. And if you're using astrology as a form of prediction and stuff like that. So I hope you have enjoyed this. I know it was a bit of a ramble, but please check out the links down below, and I am sending you love and light. Thank you.